Sorry, yes, the aeroplane. Get along with you then, old boy. I'll give you a cooee when it's ready. At the top of the single flight of stairs, Peter paused, as he usually did, to look through the circular landing window across the back garden to the river. Well, you were supposed to call it the river, though it was more like a large brook, too small for any real boats and too fast and turbulent for his tok-tok motor cruiser. But having it there, being able to walk along its bank, was marvellous, especially in the hour before dusk. From the deal table beside his bed, he collected his Moran Saulnier N mid-wing monoplane, or rather the rough 1:24 scale flying model of that aircraft which he had put together, laboriously and with some paternal help, from a 5-shilling construction kit. Then, after another pause, he picked up his green Skyhawk glider and its catapult. In the interval, he had considered and rejected the notion that the game he proposed playing with these two devices might be thought childish or destructive, or both. What did he care? And besides, anybody who just happened to see him playing would almost certainly not understand the game anyway. He went out by the front door of Montrose, alternatively 19 Riverside villas, and caught sight of Mr. Langdon doing something to a rosebush in the 5-quart-sized front garden of Ottery St. Mary, or number 11. At the sound of the door closing, he looked up and waved cheerfully to Peter, who thought him a nice and very funny man. The imitations he did were terrific, especially the ones of Sidney Howard and C.H. Middleton. Peter's father often said that if you closed your eyes you would absolutely think it was the real chap, and that Mr. Langdon ought to be on the wireless. Returning the wave, Peter moved on to the coarse grass of the meadow. As in the case of the river, this was not really a meadow, though it might at some stage have been part of one. It was an irregular green about as long as a football field, and not quite as wide, separating the two lines of semi-detached villas. A man from the council came and mowed it from time to time, but on this Sunday evening at the end of May, it was thick with flowering clumps of buttercups, dandelions, and other presumable weeds whose names Peter did not know. He was 14 years old, not tall for his age, with fair hair brushed diagonally off his brow, a fair skin unmarked by adolescent eruptions, and sound teeth, which Captain Furneaux's frequently expressed attitude to sweet-eating had done something to put in that state. Peter's looks in general were of the sort that had 2 or 3 times led strange men, encountered on the train to and from school or while waiting for it, to take an undue interest in him. That interest had always proved momentary as well as undue, for Peter had no inhibitions about using his wide vocabulary of swear words and other offensive expressions at full volume where necessary. Nor did such incidents trouble him in the least, which they might have done had he not known with some exactitude what such men had in mind. He had found out at first hand in hurried dealings with 2 of his form mates, and more leisurely ones with a 3rd boy who lived in another part of the town. Strange men were perverts and disgusting. What Peter did with friends was regarded by them all, in a ready consensus, as quite okay, as well as very enjoyable, because they only did it because they could not get girls yet, and until they could get girls. Getting girls was a long-term objective, which meant it had to be worked at all the time. How you worked at it had been elaborately devised by one Forrester, a 5th former at the grammar who had once, without any sense of incongruity being felt by either, tried unsuccessfully to kiss Peter in the school cloakroom. Forrester called his recommendations the Code of Dishonour. The degree of actual success it brought him was never very clear, but he gave it some air of authenticity by his small collection of genuine French dirty postcards, and his habit of carrying several contraceptives in his hip pocket as a matter of routine. Boys still talked of the time he had shown a packet of them to one of the girls who worked in the tuck shop and made her cry. Whatever Forrester's further performance might be, there was no doubt at all of the popularity of his code. No quasi-document since the American Declaration of Independence could have won such immediate and profound assent. "Find one," the code began, It did tend to take almost nothing for granted, which was probably a factor in the breadth of